Before I get to the fishing video, I want to take a few moments to mark the passing of fellow shore angler Mike Colvin, a man I often referred to as Nanoose Mike, and someone I considered a friend. Mike was a member of a loose fraternity, or perhaps more appropriately, informal association of beach anglers on the east side of Vancouver Island, primarily fishing between Parksville and Campbell River. I would often bump into Mike during the pink fishery on beaches around Nile Creek, and pretty much every year at a favorite spot for springs. As September approached, I could count on Mike to let me know when the springs started showing around a favorite estuary. We had our own preferred spots along that beach, but we would often spend an hour or so fishing together as the tide chased us back, and usually got together for the trek back to our vehicles, grumbling about how it seemed to get longer every year. In the summer of 2023, Mike got in touch to ask me some questions about my Shimano Stratic spinning reel because he was thinking of getting a new one. It was during those exchanges that Mike let me know that he had just learned that what he had thought was persistent pneumonia turned out to be stage 4 lung cancer. Notwithstanding that terrible news, I held out some hope that I would bump into Mike when I headed up that way on an unannounced fishing trip at the end of August. It was not to be. Then on September the 1st, the day after I got back from that trip, Mike got in touch to let me know that the springs were sniffing around the estuary. That would be the last I ever heard from him. Mike passed away on September the 27th. On this end of August trip, my wife Lori Ann and I managed to connect with a couple of other friends for a day of fishing. That's Randy Kirkpatrick on my right and Gil d'Oliveira on my left. The weather was great that day, but the fishing wasn't the best. I think we all managed to get into a few shakers and some jacks, and the odd starfish and sculpin, but there were really no keepers. Well, setting aside Randy's catch of the day, that is. Determined not to go home empty-handed, he kept a flounder, and even posed with it. Gotcha again, Randy. While the fishing wasn't the best, it was great to connect with old friends, something that seems to become more significant as the years pass, and share some laughs at one of the most beautiful spots on the east side of the island. August 29th, which happened to be my birthday, my 70th, in fact, was heavily overcast. Randy couldn't make it that day, but Gil was there with Randy's brother-in-law Leonard, with whom I fished on a number of occasions, and in fact have one video of an outing where he caught the only spring of the day. He got into one fairly early on this day. Oh, Leonard's tied into a spring here. Unfortunately, he lost it as I was moving down the beach towards him. A short time later, I got into a small spring. There's a school right here. It spit the hook as I was walking it back to shore.
Sorry.
As the wind picked up, Gil and Leonard packed it in, but Lorianne and I decided to tough it out. Well, I decided, and she humored me. Luckily, the wind died down, but the flood tide forced us off the outer sandbar where I prefer to fish, and I ended up fishing a spit in the middle of the estuary where Nanoose Mike would often set up. As a nod to another friend, I changed my lure from a zinger to a hammered gold croc with an orange stripe. It wasn't long until I was into a fish. This turned out to be a pink, but it had my heart racing for a few seconds, and it actually put up a pretty good fight before I walked it in and released it. I hadn't quite caught my breath when I got another strike, and there was no mistaking this fish. It smashed the croc about 30 feet in front of me and began peeling line as it headed for the open ocean in a 250-yard run. As the spring made another run, I had to start following it out to keep from being spooled. My wife started taking some video from shore. I finally got the fish turned and began making up some ground. Still, it was several more minutes before I could turn and make my way to a bit of spit that was still out of the water. And luckily, the fish tired out before I did, but not by much. So, a pretty good end to a day of fishing on my 70th birthday.